I felt the warm sand shift beneath me as Zane's hands found my waist, his grip firm and certain. The moonlight caught the water droplets still clinging to his shoulders from our late-night swim. Behind me, Jax's breath was warm against my neck, his presence solid and overwhelming. My husband was asleep in our beach house just 50 yards away, but in this moment, nothing else existed except the heat building between the three of us. "You sure about this?" Zane whispered, his voice rough with desire. I turned my head to meet his gaze, my answer clear in the way I pressed back against them both. "Hey, if you're enjoying this wild ride already, do me a favor and hit that like button. Your support means everything, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that'll keep you on the edge." Now, let's dive deeper. The day had started so innocently. Corbin and I had driven down to our favorite surf spot in San Diego with his buddies Zane and Jax. The three of them had been friends since college, bonding over their shared love of catching waves and living life to the fullest. I'd always gotten along well with them, maybe too well. There was an easy chemistry between us that my husband seemed oblivious to, or maybe he just trusted us all completely. The waves that morning were perfect, clean, consistent swells that had us all grinning like kids. I watched the guys paddle out first, their strong arms cutting through the water with practiced ease. Zane caught the first wave, his muscular frame moving with fluid grace as he carved across the face. Jax followed, more aggressive in his approach, throwing spray as he snapped off the lip. My husband went next, steady and reliable as always, taking the safe line but making it look effortless. Then it was my turn. I felt their eyes on me as I paddled out, the attention sending a little thrill through me. I'd been surfing since I was 15, and I knew I looked good doing it. The bikini I'd chosen that morning was perhaps a bit more revealing than necessary, the royal blue fabric highlighting my tan and curves in all the right ways. As I caught my first wave of the day, I could hear Zane whooping from the lineup, his enthusiasm infectious. We spent hours in the water, trading waves and playful banter. The guys were competitive but inclusive, always making sure I got my share of the good sets. There was something intoxicating about being the only woman in the group, feeling their protective yet appreciative energy. When Jax helped me navigate a particularly tricky section, his hand lingering on my lower back as he guided me, I felt a spark that had nothing to do with the adrenaline of surfing. By late afternoon, we were all exhausted but exhilarated. We made our way back to the beach house, salt-crusted and sun-kissed. Corbin immediately claimed the couch, his energy completely spent. "I'm done," he announced, stretching out and pulling a cap over his eyes. "Wake me for dinner." Within minutes, his breathing had deepened into sleep. That left me with Zane and Jax on the deck, the three of us still buzzing with energy. We cracked open some beers and settled into the outdoor furniture, the late afternoon sun casting everything in golden light. The conversation flowed easily, touching on everything from wave forecasts to travel dreams. But there was an undercurrent I couldn't ignore, a tension that seemed to grow stronger as the sun sank lower. "You were killing it out there today, Riley," Jax said, his green eyes bright with admiration. He was leaning forward in his chair, elbows on his knees, giving me his full attention. "That barrel you got on the third set? Pure poetry." "Thanks," I said, feeling heat rise in my cheeks that had nothing to do with the sun. "You guys weren't too shabby yourselves," Zane laughed, running a hand through his sandy hair. "We've been surfing together for years, but watching you out there, it's different. You've got this natural flow that's just mesmerizing." The way he said it, his voice dropping slightly, made my pulse quicken. I took a sip of my beer, using the moment to study both of them. Zane was the more laid back of the two, with an easy smile and relaxed posture that made him incredibly approachable. His sun-bleached hair and deep tan spoke of countless hours in the water, and there was something almost magnetic about his calm confidence. Jax was different, more intense, with darker features and a restless energy that kept him constantly moving. Even sitting still, he seemed coiled, ready to spring into action. His gaze was more direct, more challenging, and when he looked at me, I felt like he was seeing right through my casual facade to something deeper. "So what's the plan for tonight?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. "More surfing in the prayer morning?" "Definitely," Zane replied. "Dawn patrol, if we can drag ourselves out of bed." "Depends on how late we stay up," Jax added with a grin that held just enough suggestion to make my stomach flutter. As if on cue, we heard Corbin's soft snoring from inside. The sound made us all glance toward the house, and when our eyes met again, something had shifted. The playful banter took on a different edge, charged with possibility. "He's out cold," Zane observed, his tone carefully neutral. "Poor guy," I said, though my mind was racing. "He pushed himself pretty hard today." "What about you?" Jax asked, leaning closer. "Still have energy left?" The question seemed innocent enough, but the way he asked it, combined with the way both men were looking at me, made my breath catch. I felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, and they were daring me to jump. Maybe, I said softly, meeting first Jax's gaze, then Zane's. What did you have in mind? The silence that followed was loaded with tension. I could hear the waves breaking in the distance, the sound rhythmic and hypnotic. The sun had dipped low enough that the deck was bathed in warm golden light that made everything feel dreamlike. Zane was the first to move, standing and extending his hand to me. Want to go for a walk? The beach is beautiful at sunset. I glanced toward the house where my husband slept, then back at the two men watching me expectantly. Every rational part of my brain was screaming warnings, but my body was already responding to the invitation. I placed my hand in Zane's, feeling the calluses from years of surfing, the strength in his fingers as they closed around mine. Jax fell into step beside us as we made our way down to the water's edge. The beach was nearly empty, now just a few distant figures walking dogs or watching the sunset. The sand was still warm beneath our bare feet, and the waves were gentler now, lapping peacefully at the shore. We walked in comfortable silence for a while, the tension between us building with each step. I was acutely aware of their presence. On either side of me, the way Zane's thumb traced small circles on my hand, the way Jax's arm occasionally brushed against mine. This is perfect, I said finally, needing to break the silence before it overwhelmed me. It really is, Zane agreed, but when I looked at him, he wasn't watching the sunset. He was watching me. Riley, Jax said, his voice serious now. We should probably talk about what's happening here. I stopped walking, my heart pounding. What do you mean? You know what I mean, he said gently. This tension between us. It's been building all day. Zane moved closer, still holding my hand but now facing me fully. We don't want to put you in an awkward position. Corbin's our friend, but, I whispered. But we can't pretend we don't feel this connection, he finished. I looked between them, these two beautiful men who were offering me something I'd never dared to imagine. My marriage was solid, built on love and trust and shared dreams, but it had also become comfortable, predictable. Standing here with Zane and Jax, I felt alive in a way I hadn't in months. What are you suggesting? I asked, my voice barely audible, over the sound of the waves. Nothing you don't want, Jax said quickly. We would never pressure you, but if you're feeling what we're feeling... He trailed off, letting the invitation hang in the air between us. I closed my eyes for a moment, weighing the consequences against the desire that was burning through me like wildfire. When I opened them again, both men were watching me with a mixture of hope and concern. They cared about me, I realized. This wasn't just about physical attraction, though that was certainly there. There was genuine affection, friendship, and respect underlying the desire. Show me, I whispered. The words were barely out of my mouth before Zane's free hand was cupping my face, his thumb tracing my cheekbone. Are you sure? Instead of answering with words, I rose up on my toes and pressed my lips to his. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, but when I didn't pull away, he deepened it. His lips were warm and tasted of salt and beer, and the way he kissed me, with complete focus and attention, made my knees weak. When we broke apart, I turned to find Jax watching us with dark, intense eyes. Without hesitation, I reached for him, pulling him closer until I could feel the heat radiating from his body. His kiss was different from Zane's, more urgent, more demanding, but equally intoxicating. We should go somewhere more private, Zane murmured against my ear, his breath sending shivers down my spine. I nodded, not trusting my voice. They led me further down the beach, away from the house and any chance of being seen. We found a secluded cove protected by large rocks, the sand soft and undisturbed. The sunset painted everything in warm oranges and pinks, making the moment feel surreal, like something from a dream. Jack spread out his beach towel on the sand, and I sank down onto it, my legs suddenly unsteady. Both men knelt beside me, their hands gentle but sure as they began to explore. Zane traced patterns on my bare shoulder, while Jax's fingers tangled in my hair. You're beautiful, Zane breathed, his voice full of wonder. Absolutely stunning, Jax agreed, his thumb brushing across my lower lip. Their reverent touches and soft words made me feel like a goddess. I'd always been confident in my body. Surfing had kept me fit and strong, but the way they looked at me, touched me, made me feel beautiful in a way that went beyond the physical. I reached for them both, my hands exploring the hard planes of their chests, feeling the warmth of their skin beneath my palms. They were both beautifully built from years of surfing, all lean muscle and sun-bronzed skin. Under my touch, I felt their breathing quicken, their bodies responding to my exploration. I can't believe this is happening, I whispered. Do you want it to stop? Zane asked, his hand stilling on my waist. No, I said without hesitation. Don't stop. What followed was a symphony of sensation. They took turns kissing me, their lips trailing from my mouth to my neck to my shoulders. Hands roamed freely, exploring, teasing, building the heat between us until I was gasping with need. The way they moved together, anticipating each other's actions, was like watching masters at work. Zane's touch was gentle but sure, his hands mapping every curve with patient thoroughness. When his lips found that sensitive spot just below my ear, I arched against him, a soft sound escaping my throat. He smiled against my skin, pleased with my response, and continued his exploration. Jax was more direct in his approach, his touch more urgent. When his hand skimmed along my inner thigh, I trembled, my breath catching. The contrast between their styles was intoxicating. Zane's patient worship and Jax's barely restrained hunger creating a perfect balance. "Let us take care of you," Jax murmured, his voice rough with desire. I nodded, surrendering completely to the moment. They began to remove the barriers between us, their movements slow and reverent. Each piece of fabric that fell away was met with appreciative murmurs and gentle caresses. I felt cherished, desired, alive. The sand was warm beneath us as they laid me back, the sound of the waves creating a rhythmic soundtrack to our encounter. The last light of day painted everything in soft pastels, making the moment feel otherworldly. Zane positioned himself beside me, his hands gentle as they explored my form. His touch was like warm honey, slow and sweet, building heat gradually. When his lips followed the path his hands had traced, I gasped, my back arching off the towel. Jax moved to my other side, his approach more intense but equally skilled. The contrast between their touches was driving me wild, Zane's patient exploration and Jax's focused attention creating sensations I'd never experienced before. "You're incredible," Zane whispered against my skin, his breath warm and tantalizing. "So responsive," Jax added, his voice thick with appreciation. Their words of admiration made me feel powerful, desired in a way that went beyond the physical. I reached for them both, wanting to give as much as I was receiving. Under my touch, they responded beautifully, their breathing becoming labored as I explored them. The three of us moved together like dancers, each touch and kiss building on the last. They seemed to communicate without words, taking turns, sharing, me between them in a way that felt natural and right. There was no jealousy, no competition, just three people lost in the moment, in each other. When Zane settled between my legs, his movement was slow and deliberate. He watched my face as he joined with me, making sure I was comfortable, that I wanted this as much as he did. The feeling was incredible, different from my husband, new and exciting in ways that made my head spin. Jax positioned himself beside us, his hands never stopping their gentle caresses. When I reached for him, he guided me to him, his response, immediate and gratifying. The way they worked together, pleasuring me while I pleasured them, was like nothing I'd ever experienced. We moved together in a rhythm as old as time, the sound of our breathing mixing with the crash of the waves. The sand shifted beneath us as we lost ourselves in the moment, in each other. I felt like I was floating, disconnected from everything except the sensations they were creating. "Switch," Jax whispered, his voice strained with control. They changed, positioned smoothly, Jax taking Zane's place while Zane moved to where Jax had been. The transition was seamless, practiced, like they'd done this before. The thought should have concerned me, but I was too lost in sensation to care. Jax felt different than Zane, more intense, more urgent in his movements. His hands gripped my hips as he moved within me, his rhythm faster, more demanding. I matched his pace eagerly, my body responding to his energy. Zane's lips found mine, swallowing my gasps and moans as Jax drove me higher. The combination of sensations was overwhelming. Jax's powerful movements and Zane's gentle kisses creating a perfect storm of pleasure. "Let go," Zane whispered against my lips. "We've got you." And I did. I surrendered completely to the moment, to them, letting the waves of sensation wash over me like the ocean itself. My release was powerful, shaking me to my core, and they held me through it, their touches gentle and reassuring as I came back to earth. But they weren't finished with me yet. As I lay there catching my breath, they began again, their touches, reigniting the fire they'd just satisfied. This time they moved together differently, positioning themselves so that I was surrounded by them, held between their warm bodies. The sensation was indescribable, being filled by one while the other lavished attention on every other part of me. I felt cherished, worshipped, like the center of their universe. Every touch, every kiss, every movement was designed to bring me pleasure, and they succeeded beyond my wildest dreams. We moved together like this for what felt like hours, the three of us lost in our own world. They took turns, shared me between them, always making sure I was at the center of everything. The pleasure built again, stronger this time, until I was trembling with need. "Together," I gasped, wanting to feel them both completely. They understood immediately, adjusting their positions to give me what I craved. The sensation was intense, overwhelming, but they guided me through it with gentle words and softer touches. I felt complete, filled in every way possible, surrounded by their warmth and desire. The rhythm we found was perfect, slow and deep, allowing me to feel every sensation fully. They moved in sync, as if they shared one mind, one purpose. Their focus was entirely on me, on my pleasure, and under their attention, I bloomed like a flower in the sun. "You're perfect," Jax groaned, his control finally slipping. "Amazing," Zane added, his voice tight with strain. Their words pushed me over the edge again, my body clenching around them as wave after wave of pleasure crashed over me. I heard them cry out as they followed me over, their releases triggered by mine. We collapsed together on the towel, a tangle of limbs and racing hearts. For a long time, we just lay there catching our breath and processing what had happened. The stars were beginning to appear overhead, and the air had cooled with the setting sun. I was nestled between them, their arms around me, feeling safe and cherished despite the magnitude of what we'd just done. "Are you okay?" Zane asked softly, his fingers tracing gentle patterns on my arm. "More than okay," I murmured, surprised by how true it was. I should have felt guilty, conflicted, but all I felt was satisfied and strangely at peace. "No regrets?" Jax asked, his voice uncertain. I turned to look at him, then at Zane. "None," I said firmly. "You?" They both shook their heads, smiling. "Best day ever," Zane said with a grin. "Definitely," Jax agreed. We stayed there a while longer, talking softly and enjoying the closeness. Eventually, though, reality began to intrude. We needed to get back before Corbin woke up and wondered where we were. Getting dressed felt strange after what we'd shared, like putting on a costume. They helped me brush the sand from my hair and clothes, their touches gentle and caring. There was no awkwardness between us, just a new understanding, a deeper connection. The walk back to the house was quiet, each of us lost in our own thoughts. As we approached the deck, we could see through the windows that Corbin was still asleep on the couch, his position unchanged from when we'd left. "He'll never know," Jack said quietly. "He doesn't need to," I replied, though the words felt strange in my mouth. We said goodnight on the deck, keeping our voices low. Their kisses goodbye were soft, lingering, full of promise. I watched them drive away before going inside to my sleeping husband. Corbin stirred as I entered the living room, stretching and yawning. "Hey, babe," he mumbled. "Where'd you go?" "Just watched the sunset," I said, which was technically true. "The guys left a little while ago." "Good day?" he asked, sitting up and rubbing his eyes. "Amazing," I said, and meant it in every possible way. He smiled and pulled me down for a kiss. "I love you," he said against my lips. "I love you too," I replied automatically, though the words felt complicated now in ways they never had before. That night, as Corbin slept peacefully beside me, I stared at the ceiling and replayed every moment of what had happened on the beach. I should have felt guilty. I knew that logically. But all I felt was a deep satisfaction and a craving for more. The next morning brought the dawn patrol session we'd planned. Corbin was excited, energized, by his long nap and ready to hit the waves again. I was nervous about seeing Zane and Jax, unsure how to act around them with my husband present. But when they arrived, everything felt natural. They greeted me with friendly smiles and casual hugs, nothing in their behavior suggesting anything had changed. Only I could detect the subtle differences, the way Zane's hand lingered just a moment longer on my lower back, the way Jax's eyes held mine just a beat too long. The surfing was incredible. The waves were clean and consistent, and we all caught ride after ride. But I found myself watching Zane and Jax more than the waves, remembering how their hands had felt on my skin, how perfectly we'd moved together. During a lull between sets, as we sat on our boards waiting for the next wave, Jax paddled over to me. "You look beautiful out here," he said quietly, making sure Corbin couldn't hear. "Thank you," I whispered back, my cheeks warming. "Think about last night often?" he asked with a knowing smile. "Constantly," I admitted. His grin widened. "Good. So do we." The implication was clear. This wasn't a one-time thing for them any more than it was for me. The thought sent a thrill through me that had nothing to do with the approaching wave set. As we prepared to leave the beach, Zane approached me while the others were loading gear into the car. "We're going to be in town for another few days," he said casually. "Maybe we could all hang out again?" The invitation was innocent enough on the surface, but we both knew what he was really asking. "I'd like that," I said, my pulse quickening at the thought. "Tonight?" he suggested. "Same time, same place?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. The anticipation was already building, my body remembering their touches, craving more. That evening, I made an excuse about needing some alone time to process the day's surfing. Corbin, still tired from the morning session, was happy to stay in and watch TV. I felt a pang of guilt as I kissed him goodbye, but it was quickly overshadowed by excitement. They were waiting for me at our cove, looking as nervous and excited as I felt. The evening was warm, the sunset even more spectacular than the night before. But this time, there was no hesitation, no careful conversation. We all knew why we were there. "Missed you today," Zane said as I approached. "Missed you?" "Both," I replied honestly. This time, when they reached for me, I went willingly, eagerly. The passion that ignited between us was even stronger than before, fueled by the knowledge of how good we could be together. They seemed more confident, too, more sure of what I liked, what made me respond. The encounter was different this time. More intense, more adventurous. They pushed boundaries we hadn't crossed the night before, always checking to make sure I was comfortable, that I wanted everything they were giving me. And I did want it, all of it, more than I'd ever wanted anything. We explored each other thoroughly, learning what made each other gasp and moan and tremble. They worked together seamlessly, creating sensations I didn't know were possible. By the time we finally collapsed together on the sand, I was completely exhausted and utterly satisfied. "This is dangerous," I whispered as we lay there under the stars. "The best things usually are," Jax replied, his arm tightening around me. "What happens when you leave?" I asked, voicing the question that had been haunting me. "We'll figure it out," Zane said firmly. "This doesn't have to end just because we're in different cities." The promise in his voice made my heart race. I knew this was crazy, that I was risking everything I'd built with Corbin. But lying there between these two incredible men, feeling more alive than I had in years, I couldn't bring myself to care about the consequences. 3 days later, they had to leave. The goodbye was harder than I'd expected, filled with promises to stay in touch and plans for future visits. I watched their car disappear down the coast highway, feeling like part of me was going with them. Now, weeks later, I find myself constantly checking my phone for messages from them, planning excuses for weekend trips that might coincidentally coincide with their travel schedules. Corbin has noticed my distraction, asking if I'm okay, if something's bothering me. "Just thinking about that perfect surf session," I tell him, which is true in a way. "We should definitely do that again," he says enthusiastically. "Maybe invite Zane and Jax down for another visit." "Maybe," I agree, my pulse quickening at the thought. Because the truth is, I can't stop thinking about that night on the beach, about the way they made me feel, about the connection we shared. It was reckless and dangerous and absolutely incredible. And despite all the rational reasons why I should walk away, I know I won't. Some waves are just too perfect to let pass by. So tell me, have you ever found yourself caught in a moment that changed everything? When temptation calls, do you ride the wave or let it pass? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one and love hearing from you. And if this story got your heart racing, smash that like button and hit subscribe. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Until then, keep riding those perfect waves, whatever form they take.